Why do so many programmers end up hating their jobs and decide to like quit and go start a farm and raise livestock? I'm making this video because I actually saw this on Reddit recently, and I saw that there was a story about a software developer who ended up quitting his job and decided to buy a farm and raise animals. And I read the article, and he was just kind of talking about how just tired of working and wanted to do something more meaningful with his life. And I have a funny story that I've told a few times on this channel, that when I started learning how to code, one of the senior level developers that I worked with that mentored me and kind of took me under his wing to teach me, we were about the same age, but he had gone to college and was a software developer for 10 years. And I had learned how to code and just became a software developer at that point. So he had about 10 years experience, and I was wet behind the ears just getting my first job. I remember telling him like, I can't wait to do this for the rest of my life. And he told me like, I can't wait till I can quit and go open a coffee shop. It makes me think, because now as someone who has kind of experienced different work environments, and I've worked with different teams, and I've been on toxic teams and I've been on healthy teams, and I've gone from being overworked and stressed to like being totally bored and not enjoying my job. I think I have a good idea of some of the different reasons why I think programmers end up burning out, and why the expectancy of a programmer at most jobs, even FAANG companies, is only like 3 to 5 years at best. And really, I think the average is like 2 to 3 years. Many of us either experience toxic work environments, or we end up getting bored and don't feel challenged anymore. And I think that's why a lot of us end up not liking this job after a while. And I'll talk a little bit about like my experience with a toxic work environment and some of that aspect of it. What really sucks about a toxic work environment is that many of the times, like the team that you're with, like the developers, end up being the reason why you stick around. You end up having like a few people on the team that you really enjoy working with, but the work environment itself and the company and the higher ups end up really taking a toll on you. They end up leading you on death marches. Some of your managers will make promises that the development team knows can't be met or can't keep. And many of the times the higher up, more executive management wants us to build stuff that isn't reasonable within the time frames that they ask us to. And you'll have a lot of non-technical management that just demands way more than what you're capable of. You'll have poor structure and resources for the developers. And from my experience with some of the toxic teams that I've been on, you're just kind of left to make do. There's a lot of meetings and non-development related stuff that ends up taking up a lot of your time. So then you're not left with enough time to actually implement the things that you need to work on, because management wants you to just spend all your time doing stupid like answering emails or attending meetings that you don't really need to be in. And that's been kind of my experience with the toxic work environments. I can go into a lot of detail, but I think that at a high level, that's like the recipe for most toxic work environments is non-technical management that demands a lot out of the developers, and eventually too many demands that can't be met lead to developers being overworked. A lot of the times we're also underpaid, and we just get kind of tired of dealing with that. It's like, how many death marches can you go on before you just decide to quit? And I really saw that at my first job. I think it was really good for me to see that as a junior developer, but it really sucked to see a lot of the people that I enjoyed working with kind of go through that and then eventually go through it myself. And starting off there and having some of the senior level people, the lead developer that hired me, just watch them just get overworked and burnt out to the point where they just decide to quit and not do it anymore, straight up Office Space style. Another thing that I'll say that I think causes a lot of programmers to leave, sometimes on teams that I've been on that I've realized kind of have a lot of those flaws, but just technically aren't toxic. It's still a lot of the same stuff where you'll be stuck in a lot of meetings and stuck doing a lot of stuff that just isn't software related, that isn't coding. And anyone who's worked in software long enough knows that the more experience you have as a developer, the less and less code it seems that you write, and eventually you end up becoming a manager. And that seems to be the route that a lot of programmers end up taking, or maybe not the route, but it's just kind of what ends up happening to us, is that we'll have these jobs where we start off and maybe we stay at the same place for a while, but while we're at that place, it starts off as like all we focus on is coding and building stuff, and then eventually it's like a little more meetings and a little more meetings and a little more meetings, to the point where your whole life is meetings and emails and you barely ever get to write any code. Then you end up hiring more people to do that work. The work that you enjoyed to do is actually the programming, the writing of the code, the building stuff, but you don't do that anymore. You end up doing a lot of the planning and the organizing and leading other people to do the coding. And I think that that's another big reason why many of us end up not really enjoying this anymore, is because we end up either burning out or doing something that wasn't what we originally wanted to do. And we don't always do it on purpose, but what happens is that after you have so much experience, the roles that you start to take on all end up being like that. Let's say you have 1 to 3 years of experience. Well, at that point, you might be doing more coding, but eventually you'll move into more management stuff. And then you have now 5 to 10 years of experience. And when you start applying for jobs with that much of experience, they expect you to already have some more of that managerial efficiency. And you kind of come on as someone who's going to be more of a mentor and a leader. And you're not just in a spot to where you can apply for jobs that is just purely coding, because now companies expect you to have more experience with leading teams. So then you can never go back to just being the guy that writes code. And the more experience you have, the more managerial roles that you end up in, even if they're just software developer titles or engineer titles, you end up still being like tech leads, or you end up being more of a manager because of your experience. The companies almost expect that from you. And then it's very hard for you to get like a senior developer role that doesn't have a whole ton of meetings and bull like that and is just more focused on coding. So then that leads us to being unhappy, because many of us didn't sign up to be managers. Many of us didn't sign up to lead teams and herd sheep and herd cats. Me personally, I know that over the years, my roles have taken on a little bit more responsibility in that sense. I dislike it a lot. And I noticed that when I start to really not like a job is when I'm just doing too much of that stuff. Even if it's not a toxic work environment, it's because I have to do a whole bunch of stuff that really isn't coding and really isn't what I wanted to do. And then the last thing I'll say is that if you happen to be in a spot where you don't have to do too much managerial stuff and you don't have a toxic work environment, the other reason why many developers end up getting like done with this job is that we get bored. We get bored of working on the same thing all the time. We get bored of working with the same tech. We get bored of just being on autopilot. I know that for me, the most fun I have is either when I'm learning a new tech or building a new project. And I've worked on teams that have been responsible for brand new projects, and I've worked on teams that have been responsible for maintaining older projects, and I've worked on a combination of both. I've been on a variety of different types of teams and have worked with different types of companies, and I noticed the same thing happens to me in each one. The first 6 months to a year, you're still new, you're getting a feel for the project, you're getting a feel for the company, you're getting a feel for your team. But then once that first year starts passing and you kind of know the code base, you know the process, you know your teammates, you know what to expect every day at work, and you're kind of doing the same thing over and over, and you're really on that autopilot mode, and there's really nothing exciting to look forward to at work. It starts getting hard for you to continue doing that and being excited for work. I know personally myself, I have experienced that many times, that when I'm on a team, after that first initial like honeymoon phase of like, hey, cool new project, or hey, cool new stack, it kind of wears off. And then it's just like, oh, hey, I'm doing the same old CRUD functionality all the time, and I'm working with the same tech all the time. And now the thing that was challenging because it was new to me and I had to learn about it when I first started has become like this mundane, repetitive thing that I do all the time. Like, another day at the office, probably like what a postal worker feels like. And that's probably why they go postal. You sit there and you sort mail all day long, and you know where everything goes, and you know exactly what you're going to do that day, and you know what you're going to do the next day, and you know what you're going to do for the rest of your life if you keep that job. And that's what it feels like for a lot of us after we get bored at a job. And I think that that's probably the third reason why so many developers and programmers end up just getting really tired of this job and wanting to do something different, to the point where we end up pursuing completely different careers and we get out of software. It's funny because I always think like, well, you know, when a programmer doesn't want to be a programmer anymore, they start a YouTube channel or they start woodworking or something stupid like that. We try to find these fulfilling hobbies, and we try to find these things that bring us enjoyment because we are so dissatisfied with our jobs. But we end up doing them because now we've kind of gotten used to the nice salaries and the nice lifestyle that we end up in these positions where we don't really enjoy the work anymore. And it's not because we don't enjoy the programming and the building stuff. It's because we don't enjoy all the other stuff, whether it be the toxic work environment or all the extra duties that have nothing to do with coding and programming, or we just get completely bored because we're not doing anything exciting and we're just working with the same tech and the same stuff that we've been working with for years. And I think that's why many of us decide to just go buy a farm. I just wanted to share that because I have become the programmer turned YouTuber turned person who burnt out and is leaving his job and all that. And I thought it was funny that I saw that article about the programmer that quit his job to go start a farm and how he's just so happy now. Maybe we just need something more than just sitting in front of a computer all day and having to go to meetings and respond to emails. All right, with all that said, I hope this brought you a little bit of value or was helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.